They toil in anonymity, and the hope is that many of you do not know their individual names because that means they are succeeding. The biggest thing is their success as an individual unit is critical to any and all success that BYU football hopes to have this fall. And with a new look along this offensive line, the coaches hope they got the right mix.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. I'm Jake Hatch, executive producer at the KSL Sports Zone and a soon-to-be 14-year credentialed media member at BYU. I am your resident expert and insider as your host here on this podcast. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars a part of your day and making it, in fact, your first listen of the day. Coming up on today's show, we're talking all things BYU offensive line. It's a new look along the offensive front after a long stretch of guys essentially being in the same spots. Will this new look unit be the one that will be that proverbial tip of the spear, as former BYU offensive line coach Jeff Grimes called it once upon a time? Well, that's the hope, and we'll talk about that. We'll also catch up with Shehan Jeyarajah from CBS Sports. Had a great chance to talk all things BYU and Big 12 with one of the foremost minds when it comes to Big 12 football. We'll catch up with him coming up on today's show, and we'll finish up today's show talking with BYU linebacker Jack Kelly. What brought him back to BYU? What does he hope to accomplish, and what is expected to be his final season as a BYU Cougar? He explains all that and more, and we'll get to that a little later on. All right, today's show, by the way, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. New customers bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets. If your first $5 bet hits, go to FanDuel.com or open the app today to get started. All right, let's talk BYU offensive line. Now, I know that O-line play is not sexy. A lot of people out there are like, why are you talking about offensive line, Jake? You talk about this all the time, but I can tell you this much. Any and all success, high-level success, I should say, for BYU football, it will begin in the trenches this year. You have a new look offense led by a new look quarterback. Well, guess what? Their best friend is having an offensive line in front of them that can get the job done and make sure that they stay upright and they're not running for their lives every single time they get the snap. It's a new look along this offensive front. Yeah, there's some holdovers, guys like Waylon Lapuaho and Austin Leusa. They're guys who were stalwarts last year and played a lot of snaps for this BYU offensive line, but you lose both tackles from last year's team. You lose your stalwart center and our good friend Connor Pay, who had been in that spot for 3 or 4 years in a row. It is a new look along this offensive front, but you have to make sure they get the right mix of guys. And I will tell you this much. I've got full faith that TJ Woods, he will find that right mix. He does have some nice options to work with. That is the good news. As you look at Isaiah Jatta, a guy that BYU brought in last year, and I don't know how many programs in the entire country would have brought in a transfer offensive lineman who was slated to be a senior and say, hey, no, oh, by the way, you have a redshirt year. We're going to redshirt you. How many programs would have done that? Well, BYU did it, and the hope is that redshirt time, he did see some action in the 4 or 5 games you're allotted, if you include the bowl game, that is time well spent, and then he will emerge now as either the starting, what I expect to be the starting left tackle, but also could be the right tackle for BYU, and hold it down on one of the edges. Opposite him, BYU won the recruiting battle that lasted seemingly forever. 2 times, Andrew Gentry decided that BYU was not for him. And the 3rd time apparently was the charm, as he comes in now with a national championship ring from his time at Michigan and the expectation that he will either be a left or a right tackle for BYU and really come into his own, hopefully, as an offensive lineman and fulfill the promise he once upon a time had as a 4-star prospect. Those 2 guys lead the new look along this offensive line, because if they don't succeed, BYU is going to have problems, because if your tackles can't hold up, guess what? Power 4 defenses are going to eat you alive. On the interior, I actually expect BYU to be just fine, because I think Bruce Mitchell has emerged into one of the best stories in recent memory for BYU. Remember, he was a defensive lineman that Jay Hill said, hey, I think he'd be better served to move over to the offensive line. And in a singular offseason, he went from being a guy who planned on rushing the passer and tackling running backs to being a guy who plans on opening holes and being a driving force behind this new look O-line. He is going to be your day one center. He's going to take over for Connor Pay, and those are some pretty sizable shoes that he has to fill. Guys like Tijon Karoma, James Empey, and now most recently Connor Pay have been absolute stalwarts at the position for multiple seasons in a row. Can that be Bruce Mitchell's career path? Can he start for multiple seasons in a row at that pivot spot? Well, that's the hope, because if he does, that means that he has become truly the lineman that BYU thought he was going to be. I think Waylon Lapuaho is the best NFL draft prospect on this offensive line that BYU has, and that's not to say that Isaiah Jatta, Andrew Gentry, Bruce Mitchell, to say that any of them don't have NFL-type talent, because they do. But I think Waylon Lapuaho has rounded into the best guard at that left guard spot that BYU has seen in a hot minute. He is absolutely electric, and I know that playing offensive line, once again, it's not a position that everybody's watching because they're tracking the ball, and offensive linemen very rarely are synonymous with seeing the ball, etc. But I think he has become everything BYU hoped he was going to become when he transferred from Utah State to BYU, and even then some. He has absolutely become a rock, and he's one of those guys who's expected to essentially, whoever plays opposite him at that left tackle spot, he's going to be there to relay the calls down the line to them. And also, at the same time, should Bruce Mitchell falter at all, a guy like Waylon Lapuaho has proven capable of being able to be the guy that calls out the audibles that the offensive line relies upon to get their their assignments right. He can do that. He's also played right tackle in a pinch. Remember, he did that against Houston last year when BYU had a need at that spot. His versatility, his leadership, he is going to be a guy that's relied upon more so now than he ever has been before, and I think he's ready to step into that void. At that right guard spot, Austin Leusa, Kyle Saforchich, the guys that BYU's brought in via the transfer portal in recent memory from Southern Utah, they both look like absolute studs, and that battle will be fierce for who ends up being that starting right guard. And I can't even discount the other guys on the roster for BYU from taking those spots. The nice part is there is depth, there's talent, there is an overall belief that BYU, they will get the right mix of offensive linemen, and if they don't, well, that could be a problem, because if they don't have that, BYU has an issue on their hands. You also look at other players out there that BYU hopes will emerge this season. I can think of the likes of Ethan Thomason, Andrew Williams, for example, freshmen who have got all the talent in the entire world, but they've got to hone that this year. They may not become those starting caliber players, but can this be the year they kind of step in and become that backup? And eventually, maybe a year from now, maybe 2 years from now, they emerge as a starting caliber offensive lineman. It all starts now, and TJ Woods, he's got his work cut out for him, because BYU's offensive line play under TJ Woods has been pretty darn stellar. But this year, he's got a lot of guys who were stalwarts for him. You can think of the guys like Braden Keim, Caleb Etienne, and Connor Pay. They were rocks. You knew exactly what to expect from them. Well, you have new guys in those spots, new guys across this offensive line. And if TJ Woods, as good as he is cracked up to be, and I truly believe he is that good as a position coach, and he's even proven that on the recruiting trail with some of the linemen he's brought in recent years, BYU's offensive line is in very good hands, and the expectation is that they will not miss a beat. And if they don't miss a beat, BYU's offense is going to be just fine, because they will have a stud O-line leading the way. And as Jeff Grimes, as I said, once upon a time said, they will truly be that tip of the spear that BYU needs them to be for any and all success they hope to have this season. All right, coming up next, another national voice talking all things BYU and Big 12. Shehan Jeyarajah from CBS Sports and CBSSports.com, one of the favorite guys I get to talk to every single year, seemingly at Big 12 Media Days. Had a great chat one-on-one. We'll get to that next as we roll on right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Now, summer sports are in full swing. Whether you're all about baseball under the lights, you're a soccer fan who's watching all the soccer action going on, both domestic and international, or even you're just a golf guy. You like watching golf. The best part is FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting along the way. And if you're already following that action, why not up the ante just a little bit and make it a little more thrilling and do it with our friends over at FanDuel, as you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. Obviously, all of us want to have a little extra cheddar in our pockets. Well, that's what our friends over at FanDuel can do for you guys. Whether you're placing a same-game parlay or watching your bet right into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes you feel like you are part of the action. And the best part is it's easy to use. Speaking of their app, it's fun to play, and more importantly, it pays out very, very quickly. That's the best part about it. So if you're new to FanDuel, new customer bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. It's as simple as that, my friends. So open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Once again, new customers, bet $5, get $150 in your bonus bets in your account as soon as that first bet wins. So join today. Go to FanDuel.com and get started with our friends over at FanDuel. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Time now to let you hear from Shehan Jeyarajah from CBSSports.com. He's got an incredible feel for the Big 12 Conference, and I always love talking with Shehan because he lives in Texas. He has been covering football for a really, really long time. He comes to the Big 12 looking at it from a Texas-centric point of view, which is not a bad thing. I know it can sound negative, but he understands that this conference, it's better when it's the sum total of its parts are existing and coexisting, even thriving all at the same time. And he's got a lot of thoughts about what he expects from BYU, but more importantly, where BYU kind of fits in the Big 12 pantheon this fall. And without further ado, here's that conversation with Shehan Jeyarajah that I had at Big 12 Media Days.
Big 12 Media Days, it's a crazy time. I know you do Media Days all the time, but what's the vibe around this one been in particular from your perspective?
Well, first of all, I mean, the Big 12 does a great job with Media Days. Like, it is as open as you can possibly be. Players, coaches, everybody walking around, media, of course. Yeah. And so I always love doing this event, even compared to some of the other ones that I do. But, you know, I think everybody's excited. I think that the energy is high. Obviously, it's always fun that this is the first Media Day that goes on. But I think on top of that, like, everybody knows, especially after last year, that like you can't count anybody out. And so there's excitement everywhere, there's intrigue everywhere. I think that there are 16 good coaches in this league, a lot of good players. I mean, 11 returning quarterbacks, right? So, so much excitement, I think, around that, and I think that we've really gotten to bask in it.
We talked to you on radio earlier this week. You talked about this potentially being the year of the quarterback in the league. How much can that do for the league's perception to have elite quarterback play?
I think it's huge because, you know, last year was the year of the running back, but I don't think that carries as much weight for people. And the other piece, too, is, you know, there was a Shedeur Sanders, obviously, who was an NFL prospect, but there are a bunch of guys in this league who could enter the first, second, third round conversation, right? Like, it's not just necessarily having good college players. It's also having guys that get on NFL radars, that compete for All-America status. You know, we'll see if anybody can get into the Heisman race, but, like, there are players who have that capability, right? And so, you know, you look at EA Sports, 5 of their top 20 quarterbacks are from the Big 12, and by the way, they completely screwed Josh Hoover for not being on that list. I think that he clearly should have been there. So, again, there's a lot of upside, and I mean, here's the reality too, right? Especially for teams that aren't like a fan's primary team, you want to watch fun quarterbacks. And I think that if there's a little bit more at that position, like, yeah, the running backs and defenses are great, but I think that quarterbacks are really what brings a lot of attention.
The thought was about 2 months ago that BYU was going to be part of that quarterback conversation. Jake Retzlaff obviously off and find his next stop. What's your perception of BYU going into this year without him?
Well, I've said for most of the offseason that I saw 5 teams as being in my top Big 12 contender group, and I don't think that this pushes BYU all the way out, but I think that this puts them on the borderline instead of in that group. And the reason that I say that is less because I think that BYU can't be a great team next year. I mean, this is a defensive-led team, right? Like, I think that kind of got lost in translation at times last year, that they were a top 5 pass defense in the country. But Jake Retzlaff was so important to how they ran their offense last year. Just with, obviously the injuries they had at running back, and he was able to step up in a big way. He was able to go downfield. He had some great receivers to work with. And the receivers are back. I think the running game should be really good. Offensive line, obviously, some turnover. But, like, you kind of want to know, do you have a conductor there that can really make it all happen? And I think not just the fact that they don't have Jake Retzlaff back, it kind of sucks that they don't get to go through spring camp and build an offense around the skill set of McKay Hillstead or Chasen Borgett or Bear Bachmeier, right? Like, they're going to have to figure out how they want to run their offense on the fly. And so that just means that there might be a few more bumps in the road, I think, than what there would have been with a returning quarterback. I still think that BYU should expect to be in the top tier of the Big 12 and have a chance in November to go. But they go from being what was, for me, a favorite to being a contender.
Got it. Now, Kalani Sitake enters his 10th season at BYU. Where do you think he fits in the pantheon? You already mentioned there's 16 really good coaches. Where does he fit in the Big 12 in terms of the coaches?
Well, I'll tell you what, he's, to me, the most underrated coach in the Big 12. I think that I even mentioned this to him yesterday, actually. I think that people view him and viewed BYU coming into last year as the 5-7 program they were in year one, and not the team that won 9 games like in 5 of the last 6 years, right? Like, this is a program that's been really good for a long time. They won 11 freaking games last year. Like, I don't think people talk about it enough. Yeah. And he's been decisive. He's made the right calls. He's brought in good quarterbacks. He's brought in good systems. Like, I think that he does everything that you want a great coach to do in this era. And I think that he also does a great job of building relationships with his players. And so, I mean, you just, again, like, I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I was like, the thing is, right, like, if Kalani Sitake wasn't a great coach, you'd want him to be a great coach so that he could be the head coach at BYU, right? Yeah. And it's just a benefit that he's a great coach. So I would have him for sure in my top 25 coaches in college football. I think that to get into that top 15-ish conversation, top 10-ish conversation, you got to win big. Yeah. You got to win that Big 12 title. You got to be on that stage. But I have every faith that he has the capability of doing so. Once you get to the top 25, it's about what you do from then.
BYU's perception nationally kind of ranges person to person. What is your perception of the Cougars?
Well, I mean, they're a great program. Yeah. They bring in great players. They develop at a high level. Obviously, they've had success at the quarterback position historically. Yeah. And I think that, BYU's, especially under Kalani Sitake, is supposed to be a program that's good on defense. I'm glad that in the last 2 years they've really gotten back to that with Jay Hill coming out. I think he's done a tremendous job. And so they're a team that's tough, physical, a tough out every single week. I mean, for people who don't know, I'm a Baylor grad, right? And I remember that 22 Baylor BYU game. Yeah. And teams were just banging into each other, right? Like, that's how BYU football is supposed to be. It's supposed to be scary, it's supposed to be physical, and it's supposed to be innovative on offense. And again, I think that they've done a really good job of capturing that in this era.
There you go, Shehan Jeyarajah. Big thank you to him for taking the time to join myself. And as I mentioned, this is a guy who is a Texas thoroughbred. I believe he's from the Dallas-Fort Worth area growing up, and he covered high school football in Texas. He now covers college football on a national level. He understands this sport intrinsically, and more importantly, the Big 12 Conference. And he thinks that BYU's got a pretty bright future in this conference. And that should excite you as a Cougar fan. This season's got a whole lot of unknowns. Obviously, that's what we've heard from all these different people. We've had Andy Staples. If you didn't miss that, go back and check out our Wednesday show. We had Bruce Feldman yesterday, and now you have Shehan Jeyarajah talking today about BYU and the fit in the Big 12. More importantly, where they fit in the race this fall. Yeah, with all those unknowns, I think it's hard to kind of say, hey, BYU's an odds-on favorite. Had they had Jake Retzloff, for example, that probably would have changed the conversation around BYU. But the simple fact of life is they don't have that, and they have to move forward here. And I think that guys like Shehan absolutely understand the mix, and I think he understands that BYU in time, they absolutely are going to be a program that is going to be one of the big dogs in the conference. But more importantly than that, he even believes that this season it still could be that if BYU gets the right mix of guys and the right answers to the questions that are kind of dogging them right now as they get ready for training camp. So as always, a big thank you to Shehan for taking the time to join us here on the podcast. And if you don't check out his work, get over to cbssports.com, check out CBS Sports overall and what he is doing for that network. Because I think he does an incredible job covering the Big 12 and college football by extension. All right. Coming up next, a conversation with Jack Kelly. What brought him back to BYU for another season when he was getting NFL draft love? Well, he explains that. He also talks about what he hopes to accomplish as one of the faces of this BYU defense under Jay Hill. And we'll get to that conversation next as we wrap up this week right here on Locked On Cougars. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. All right, time now to let you guys hear from a guy that I think could be the single most impactful player for BYU's defense this fall. And yes, that includes Keanu Tanabase. Yes, that includes his running mate, Isaiah Glasker. That includes everybody else that hopes to have a standout performance or two for BYU's defense. But the blend of size, speed, skill, ability, everything that Jack Kelly possesses means that he can impact the game in so many different ways that it feels like his success is ultimately BYU's success and vice versa. And I love the fact that you have a guy like this on this defense. He very easily could be in the NFL right now. He was absolutely getting looks from NFL teams due to his preternatural ability as a pass rusher, his closing speed. It was on full display last year in multiple instances. You felt like, okay, there's no way he's going to get to this quarterback. And all of a sudden he just closes like that. I snapped my fingers, and it just felt like that ability set him apart from so many different players. Well, he decided he wanted to run it back for another season in a Cougar uniform. And why did he do that? What does he hope to accomplish? And what does he think he still has to prove at the collegiate level? Well, here you go. Jack Kelly live from Big 12 Media Days.
This is your first Media Days experience, as far as I'm aware, in your college career. What's it been like?
It's been awesome. Seeing and meeting all sorts of different people and seeing the other players in the conference has been awesome. Everyone has been very polite and thoughtful, and it's been a good time.
What, like, you talk about meeting other players from other teams. Do you have any interaction with them outside of stuff like this much at all? Do you just text at all or anything like that?
Not really. There's a couple. There's one from Baylor that he played at Montana State that I know from back when I was at Weber.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't really interact with anyone else.
Obviously, big season ahead for you guys. I talked to Isaiah earlier, and I asked him this question. I want to ask you the same question. Like, what's the difference from your perspective of this team versus last year's team?
I think we're even closer as a team. I think the camaraderie and bonds that we have built from last year have even grown into this year. Mm-hmm. And then our strength coaches have done a phenomenal job with getting us bigger, faster, stronger, and allowing us to do hard things together that promote that closeness and relatedness.
We saw the video of the wall sit deal you guys had. Is that kind of indicative of what these strength coaches are doing to you guys?
Yeah, that's one of the things they put us through.
Well, what's the whole idea behind that? Is like just like to make sure you guys are on the same page, essentially?
Attention to detail, mental toughness, just seeing if we can work together.
Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, you had opportunities to potentially go pro after last season. What brought you back to BYU?
The bonds that I built with my teammates, like, there's nothing that's going to beat a brotherhood that we have right now. Mm-hmm. And also the college atmosphere. There's no atmosphere like college football. Like, when we go to the NFL, it's not going to be anything like this. So I just had to come back for one more season.
What's it like working with Coach Hill again? And obviously, I know he recruited you to Weber originally, but now you've been back with him at BYU. How's it been?
It's been awesome. Just the mind he has on him and the knowledge of the game is unbelievable. Mm-hmm. He spends so much time in the film room and knows everything. When we go into any game, he's going to know the opponent inside and out. So it's awesome to be around him and just learn from him.
What do you pull most from him as a player, if that makes sense?
Just pre-snap keys, I think, is what he's great at. Is seeing formations, what different signs they're doing, like what the O-line's looking like. So it kind of gives you run-pass reads, what play they run out of this formation, just little things like that.
So he notices tendencies then. Yes. He's able to kind of impart that to you guys.
Yep.
Now, working with a guy like Isaiah at linebacker, how much better do you think you guys can be as a linebacking core?
I think the sky's the limit, especially with both of us back there and then the other linebacking room too.
Yeah.
I think we can accomplish some great things. We're going to have to play off of each other, which is what we've done in the past. And I think if one of us gets double teamed, then the other one's going to be free. So it's just going to help us all out.
Now the D-line from last year, essentially a wholesale change, but guys like Keanu Tanavasa coming in. What do you think of the guys in front of you that are going to hopefully keep you more clean to make plays?
Yeah, this goes along with that double team I just said. Yeah. They're going to be taking some on, and that will allow us to make plays. And if they don't get the double team, then they're going to be making plays. That's how good they are.
How much better can this defense be overall?
I think tremendously better. Last year we accomplished some great things, but this year we haven't done anything. So we're going to continue to get better, and I think we'll be even better than last year.
Now, as you look forward to this coming season, do you have any personal goals you're hoping to attain?
One of them is 10 sacks, 10-plus sacks.
Okay, so you want to come off the edge then, okay.
Yeah, I want to get 10.5 sacks. I think that would be huge.
So have you been talking to Coach Pop, being like, hey, if you need to work me into DM, let me go do my thing?
No, I haven't yet.
What's it going to take to do something like that, though? Is that going to be more about blitzing, or what's it going to take?
I mean, last year there was opportunities for me to get close to that 10-sack range, but I just missed some plays.
Okay.
I'd beat the O-lineman, but maybe not finish on the QB. So just some little things like that, just better angles to the QB, stuff like that is going to help me get there.
Okay, I'm going to get you out on this one. You've been posting on social media about this water that you're drinking. What is it and why?
It's alkaline water.
Okay.
So alkaline, diseases can't live in an alkaline environment. Okay. So if your body's alkaline and you're eating good and everything, then diseases can't live there. And then you have a hydrogen bottle, which puts hydrogen in the water. Mm-hmm. And there's thousands of peer-reviewed studies on professional soccer players on the benefits of reduced recovery, reduced inflammation, just all sorts of things that's out on the internet.
So are you like talking to your teammates about hopping on this train with you on that front?
I haven't. Some people think I'm crazy, but at the end of the day, there's research behind it, and I trust it.
It's worked out for you.
Yeah, felt great.
Well, Jack, thanks for the time, man.
Thank you so much.
A big thank you, as always, to Jack Kelly. And by the way, a big thank you to everybody that took the time at Big 12 Media Days to talk with myself. We have burned through a number of these interviews this week, and all of them I thought were really, really fun to conduct. And the best part is there's still more to go. I know that's crazy to think about, but hey, BYU starts training camp early next week. July 29th is when players are supposed to report. And then obviously, I believe it's July 30th, and they'll take the field for the very first time. I, along with the rest of the BYU media corps, will be out there tracking it every step of the way. But it's time to go, everybody. I am back from vacation officially on Monday. If anything crazy happened this week, and it very well may have, you know what? We'll break it all down on our Monday edition of the show. And heck, maybe I'm back by tomorrow on a Saturday, and I can break it down then. But as always, truthfully, thank you for all of your support. Thank you for being a part of this community we have here on Locked On Cougars. Please continue to subscribe, rate, and review, share it with your family and friends, and get ready, folks. It is go time for BYU football, and I, for one, cannot wait. All right. That's a big thank you, as always, for being here on the podcast. Thank you once again for being a part of it. And thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day, and come back on Monday for another full edition of the Locked On Cougars podcast.